Iran is a hot spot right now, and they're meeting, and they have a good relationship with the representatives of Iran, and, good talks are being had.
The President of the United States always claims that our military is the most powerful army in the entire world.
17 hours, 35 nautical miles northeast of the Strait of Hormuz. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group maintained standard patrol formation in international waters, the pre-dawn darkness broken only by navigation lights and the faint glow of Bahrain's coastline to the west. Then, the radar screens erupted with contacts. The AN/Spy-1D radar array aboard the guided missile cruiser USS Cape St. George detected them first. 200 small craft emerging from Iranian territorial waters in coordinated formation. Speed, 42 knots. Bearing, direct intercept course with the carrier group. The tactical action officer aboard Cape St. George keyed the secure channel. Contact report transmitted. Threat condition elevated to Delta. Every weapon system in the strike group pivoted toward the incoming swarm. This was not a patrol. This was an assault wave. The Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had mobilized its entire fast attack craft fleet, 200 boats including Swedish-built Boghammar speedboats, domestically produced PACAP-class torpedo boats, and Chinese-designed C-14 catamarans. Each vessel carried a lethal payload, anti-ship missiles, rocket-propelled grenades, recoilless rifles, and 107 nm rockets. Intelligence analysts had wargamed this scenario for decades. Swarm tactics, overwhelming numbers designed to saturate defensive systems. The nightmare scenario was now unfolding at 42 knots across the dark waters of the Persian Gulf. At 05:19 hours, the Carrier Strike Group initiated autonomous defense protocols. 4 FA-18E Super Hornets launched from Abraham Lincoln's deck, afterburners splitting the night. Flight time to intercept point, 4 minutes. The destroyers USS Spruance and USS Frank E. Peterson, Jr. rotated their Mk-45 5-inch guns toward the threat axis. Fire control solutions locked. The cruiser Cape St. George activated its Aegis combat system, coordinating targeting data across 17 platforms simultaneously. The Iranian boats maintained formation. Distance to carrier group, 28 nautical miles. Time to engagement range, 22 minutes at current speed. At 05:21 hours, the first weapons release came from 15,000 feet. The 4 Super Hornets each carried 6 AIM-65 Maverick missiles, precision-guided munitions with infrared seekers optimized for small surface targets. Lead pilot designated the forward cluster of Iranian boats. Weapon system locked. Missiles away. 24 Mavericks screamed downward through the darkness, their rocket motors creating white contrails visible from the carrier deck. Impact in 14 seconds. The lead Iranian boats had no warning, no time to evade, no countermeasures effective against this level of precision. The first wave of explosions rippled across the water at 05:22 hours. 12 direct hits. 12 boats vaporized in superheated fireballs visible from 40 miles away. Debris fields marked each impact point, shattered fiberglass, burning fuel, scattered ordnance cooking off in secondary explosions. The Iranian swarm did not slow. They accelerated. At 05:23 hours, the remaining 188 boats split into 3 distinct attack vectors. One group targeted Abraham Lincoln directly, another moved to flank the destroyer screen, the third angled toward the ammunition ship Usen's Arctic operating 12 miles to the southeast. This was coordinated tactical doctrine. The Iranians had trained for exactly this engagement. They understood their only advantage was saturation, deliver enough simultaneous threats to overwhelm defensive capabilities. The Carrier Strike Group commander aboard Abraham Lincoln made the decisive call, unrestricted weapons free. Every platform, every system, every munition authorized for immediate employment. The Persian Gulf was about to become a killing field. At 05:25 hours, the destroyers opened fire. The MK-45 5-inch guns on Spruance and Frank E. Peterson, Jr. began their devastating work, 20 rounds per minute per gun, each projectile traveling at 2,600 feet per second. The guns fired in coordinated salvos, computer-calculated targeting ensuring maximum coverage of the boat swarm's central mass. High explosive shells detonated at timed intervals, some on impact, others via proximity, fuse at optimum fragmentation altitude. The water erupted in columns of white spray mixed with fire. 15 seconds of sustained fire. 48 shells. 31 confirmed hits. Iranian boats shattered. Hulls ripped apart by overpressure. Crews thrown into burning water. But still, they came. At 05:27 hours, the MH-60R Seahawk helicopters engaged. 8 helicopters launched from Abraham Lincoln and the destroyer screen, each carrying a mixed payload, AIM-114 Hellfire missiles, and M240 door guns. The helicopters spread across the engagement zone at 800 feet altitude, their forward-looking infrared sensors painting the Iranian boats in stark thermal contrast against the cold Gulf waters. Hellfire missiles launched in rapid sequence, laser-guided precision, eliminating one boat every 8 seconds. The door gunners added sustained 7.62 mm fire, raking the decks of boats that survived missile impacts. Fuel tanks ruptured. Ammunition stores detonated. 37 boats destroyed in 4 minutes. Distance to carrier group, 18 nautical miles. Time remaining, 11 minutes. At 05:28 hours, the Iranian boats began returning fire. The forward elements, now within 15 nautical miles of the destroyer screen, launched their anti-ship missiles, Chinese-designed C-802 missiles with a 120-kilometer range and 165-kilogram warheads. 12 missiles launched simultaneously. The AG system detected them instantly. Threat classification confirmed hostile. Engagement priority critical. The cruiser Cape St. George fired first. RIM 66 Standard missiles erupted from vertical launch cells in rippling sequence. 8 Standards airborne in 3 seconds. The missiles accelerated to Mach 3.5. Their semi-active radar seekers locked on to the incoming C-802s. Intercept occurred at 22,000 feet, 8 miles from the destroyer screen. 11 C-802 missiles destroyed. 1 penetrated the defensive envelope. The destroyer Spruance engaged with its phalanx sibs, a 6-barrel 20mm Gatling gun capable of 4,500 rounds per minute. The system achieved autonomous lock at 1.2 miles. Fire commenced. The sound was distinctive, a mechanical scream cutting through the night. Depleted uranium rounds created a solid wall of metal between the ship and the incoming missile. Impact at 400 meters. The C-802 disintegrated in a cascading explosion that showered Spruance's forward deck with shrapnel and burning fuel. Minor damage. 0 casualties. At 05:30 hours, the Super Hornets returned for their second strike run. Mavericks expended, they switched to their internal M61 Vulcan cannons, 20 mm rotary guns loaded with high explosive incendiary rounds. The pilots descended to 2,000 feet, well within visual range of the boat swarm. Attack runs commenced in staggered sequence. Each pass lasted 12 seconds, guns firing, boats exploding, pilots banking hard to avoid ground fire. 23 boats destroyed in 3 attack runs. The Iranian formation was disintegrating, but the survivors pushed forward with suicidal determination. At 05:31 hours, the leading Iranian boats crossed into the destroyer screen's close engagement zone, 8 nautical miles from Abraham Lincoln. The destroyers shifted to rapid fire mode. 5-inch guns fired continuously. RIM 116 rolling airframe missiles launched from their 21 cell launchers, targeting clusters of boats with infrared seekers. The MH-60R helicopters exhausted their Hellfire loadouts and transitioned to pure gun runs, door gunners firing until barrels glowed red. The water between the Iranian boats and the carrier strike group became impassable, a zone of overlapping fire where survival was measured in seconds. Boats exploded. Boats burned. Boats simply disintegrated under the weight of incoming ordnance. The Persian Gulf erupted in continuous detonation, a rolling thunder audible 50 miles away on the Iranian coast. At 05:34 hours, the final Iranian boats, fewer than 30 now, reached their maximum weapons range and fired everything remaining. Rocket-propelled grenades arced upward in ballistic trajectories. Recoilless rifle rounds screamed toward the destroyer screen. It was desperation fire, unguided and ineffective against warships hardened for combat. The projectiles fell short, detonated harmlessly against armored hulls, or simply missed. Return fire from the destroyers was surgical and absolute. The last Iranian boat exploded at 05:36 hours, 6.2 nautical miles from Abraham Lincoln. 11 minutes, 200 boats launched, 200 boats destroyed. At 05:48 hours, 12 minutes after the final Iranian boat vanished beneath the burning surface, the carrier strike group reported condition green. Ammunition expenditure, 847 5-inch shells, 96 AIM-65 Mavericks, 64 Hellfire missiles, 43 Standard missiles, 18 rolling airframe missiles, and approximately 127,000 rounds of 20 mm and 7.62 Emery ammunition. U.S. casualties, 0. U.S. vessel damage, minor shrapnel scarring on one destroyer, cosmetic only. Iranian casualties, estimated 1,400 personnel. Survivors in the water, unknown. Search and rescue operations commenced under neutral flag protocols, but the burning fuel and debris fields complicated recovery efforts. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had lost its entire fast attack craft operational capability in 11 minutes of sustained combat. The swarm tactic, developed over decades and practiced in dozens of exercises, had been comprehensively defeated by layered defense systems operating exactly as designed. The strategic implications cascaded within hours. Regional naval forces observed the engagement via satellite and signals intelligence. The tactical lessons were immediate and unambiguous. Swarm attacks against a modern carrier strike group were not merely dangerous. They were suicidal. The numerical advantage that Iranian doctrine depended upon proved meaningless against coordinated sensor to shooter networks capable of engaging hundreds of targets simultaneously. Gulf Cooperation Council naval commanders recognized the demonstration for what it was, a practical exhibition of why the Strait of Hormuz remained open despite decades of Iranian threats. The engagement fundamentally reshaped threat assessments across 6 nations. Naval procurement priorities shifted within weeks, investment in swarmcraft decreased dramatically, while investment in air defense and anti-ship missile capabilities accelerated. Iranian state media initially denied the engagement occurred, then claimed a training exercise had resulted in mechanical failures, finally admitting to martyrdom operations against American aggression. Supreme leader statements emphasized revenge and retaliation, but operational reality constrained rhetoric. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had no remaining fast attack capability. Reconstitution would require years and resources the Iranian economy could not readily provide. The United States Fifth Fleet issued a terse statement. All defensive actions were conducted in accordance with international law and rules of engagement. The carrier strike group remained on station. Operations continued without interruption. The message was clear and uncompromising. Freedom of navigation in the Persian Gulf was non-negotiable and would be defended with overwhelming force. 11 minutes of combat had settled a strategic question that diplomacy had debated for 40 years. The swarm could not close. The missiles could not penetrate. The carrier strike group could not be overwhelmed by numbers alone. Modern naval warfare had evolved beyond the calculus that Iranian planners had based their entire doctrine upon. At 06:00 hours, with the sun rising over the Strait of Hormuz, the USS Abraham Lincoln launched routine flight operations. FA-18s catapulted into morning sky. Tankers and reconnaissance aircraft assumed patrol stations. The carrier group maintained its position in international waters, 35 nautical miles northeast of the strait, the same position it had held at 05:17 hours before 200 Iranian boats emerged from darkness with attack intent. The strait remains open not through negotiation, but through demonstrated capability. The Persian Gulf remembers what happens when capability meets intention. 11 minutes was all it took.